Next is ordinance number 6, series 2015. First reading of an ordinance calling a general election. I need 3 to introduce. Councilman Ekstrom, Councilwoman Frida, Councilman Weed. Clerk, read by title, please.
This is a bill for ordinance number 6, series of 2015, an ordinance submitting to the vote of the electors of the City of Canyon City, Colorado at a general election to be held November 3rd, 2015. Ballot questions for candidates for the mayor position and candidates for certain council member positions.
And I have a report from the attorney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I would just say this is for a pre-election ordinance, a rather routine act that must be taken by City Council to authorize the election and designate which offices are up for election.
Very well. May I have a motion, please? Councilman Weed.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, I move we approve ordinance number 6, series of 2015 on first reading.
Second.
Second from Councilman Ekstrom. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Bates?
Aye.
Councilmember Ketchmar?
Aye.
Councilmember Shiraki?
Aye.
Councilmember Frida?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Next is ordinance number 7, series 2015. First reading, and this is an ordinance referring the question of whether to increase sales and use tax by 1.5%. I need 3 to introduce. Weed, Councilwoman Frida. Councilman Shraki? All right, clerk, read by title, please.
This is a bill for ordinance number 7, series of 2015, an ordinance referring to the eligible electors of the City of Canyon City's November 3rd, 2015 general election. The question of whether the city's sales and use tax rate should be increased by 1.5%, with all the revenue therefrom to be spent exclusively for the construction, reconstruction, repair, and maintenance of streets, roads, and bridges within the city, fixing the ballot title and question, and setting forth other details relating thereto.
I have a report from the city attorney on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This ordinance is one that you may wish to choose from in terms of looking at both ordinance 7 and 8. The difference between the two ordinances is the rate of sales and use tax increase that would be involved in the question referred to the voters. If a 1.5% rate increase were proposed to the voters, the effect of that would be that annually approximately $5 million and perhaps more would be raised and applied exclusively to street improvements. That kind of additional revenue put into streets would increase the street budget by at least 12.5% over and above what we have been doing as a city for the last several years. The city's street budget has been around $400,000 for several years. We all know that that amount is inadequate to tackle what needs to be done in terms of repairing, reconstructing, and maintaining the city streets. Whatever amount is raised by a 1% or a 1.5% sales tax probably won't cover everything in the way of needed street maintenance, repairs, and reconstruction, at least right of way, but it will make substantial strides in taking care of somewhat neglected need of the city. So ordinance number 7, again, if you would adopt it, you would be referring a question asking the voters to approve or reject a proposed 1.5% sales tax increase with all revenue therefrom dedicated to streets and roads.
John, I thought I heard you say 12.5%, and it'd actually be 12.5 times.
12.5 times. If I said percent, I misspoke.
125%.
1,250, I think. But
Yeah.
that's why we said 12.5.
It's a
times.
whole lot more money going to our streets if this.
4
were to get
million compared, or 5 million compared to 400,000 at 1.5%.
All right. So, can I have a motion on this? Councilman Weed?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to make the motion to approve ordinance number 7, series of 2015 on first reading, and I'm not going to support it.
May I have a second? Second from Councilwoman Frida. I presume there's going to be some discussion on this motion, Councilman Weed?
Yes, well, I have some comments on it. It's,
I assume so.
yeah. At our special meeting, we talked about this at length, and there was quite a bit of conversation about whether or not to go to propose a 1% or a 1.5%. And then subsequent to that meeting, I think we got some information that kind of gave us kind of a picture of the landscape of sales tax rates in other communities. And kind of jumping ahead a little bit, the 1% sales tax is in line with quite a few of the other communities that have higher sales tax rates than we do. 1.5% sales tax increase would put us in a league of our own. Those are my words, but I don't think it's an achievable. It would be nice to have the funds, but I don't think it's a realistic goal, and so I can't support it.
Any other discussion?
Whether it's 1 or 1.5, it's important we get, that people understand that the last time we had a sales tax increase was over 20 years ago, and you can't do today's work with yesterday's money. Simple as that. And I'll agree with I'll second what he proposes, if it hasn't already.
And, you know, just to follow up, I can't remember exactly how long ago. It was 10 or 15 years ago, something like that. There was the last time there was a sales tax increase proposed for improving the condition of the roads in Canyon City.
I believe that was in 2000.
Okay, so that would have been 15 years. And the comment that we made, and that has been repeated a few times, is lacking that sales tax increase, the roads are now 15 years worse shape than they were in 2000. So, and something needs to be done, and at $400,000 a year, they will continue to deteriorate, so.
I had a quick question. Not being at that meeting, I wasn't exactly sure what was discussed, but is this an either or? We're looking to put one of these two forward?
I think that's the intent. I suppose theoretically you could put them both on there, but no, I think our intent was to make a decision between the 1 or the 1.5.
Yeah, I concur with your position, Dennis.
Councilman Ekstrom?
Yeah, during that meeting, we had a legal counsel here that was offering advice, and at the time, they had said it might behoove us to put 2 questions on there. 1% to start with, and then this is what we can get done for 1%, but then at 1.5%, we can get this much more. So it was actually 2 questions that we were proposing to put out there. Again, making it clear that this needs to get done. 1% is almost mandatory. We need this. But if you were to come forward and, vote with the 1.5%, we could actually get more done. 1%, according to city staff, is going to be insufficient for us to keep up with the management plan, the roads management plan. It was going to be underfunded based on current tax revenues. That's something that we could discuss. I believe that in time our tax revenues are going to increase, that we'll be able to actually meet the needs to maintain our roads. But on today's dollars, 1% was going to be insufficient.
Any further discussion?
Well, I mean, Scott's absolutely correct. And I'm glad he brought that up, because there was some value to having both questions on the ballot. I think our general thought on it was that it's going to needlessly complicate and confuse the issue. And I think where we finally ended up is we want to make this as straightforward as possible. And, but he's absolutely right. For 1%, this is what you can do. For 1.5, you can do this much more, which we'll get a lot closer to. But it was my feeling at the time, and it may or may not be shared by the other members of council, but with the 1.5%, I think we were looking at roughly a 10-year program to kind of get the streets up to a condition that we would consider acceptable. And, you know, at the 1% rate, I think we'll get there. It'll just take longer.
Well, actually, the 1%, I thought, I was kind of surprised to see that we didn't have the 2, because I thought we left it that way, that we were going to consider that option of having, that you could choose between the 2.
I think that's where we are right now.
Yeah,
We're still there.
but, no, they would be together.
Correct.
Well, but
That's
at any
my
rate,
interpretation of
The
this.
1%, and we need to be real clear about this with the voting public, is that it will pretty much just fix the thoroughfares. There won't be any secondary side streets. The street in front of your house probably won't get fixed. It'll be doing the main roads. And that's it. So it'll kind of be just a drop in the bucket.
And then, just to also, again, the reason that we brought these, I think the reason that we, at the time, had concurred to bring it forth to council is that there was several of you that were not present at that meeting. We wanted to make sure that you were kind of clear as to why we were looking at this additional question.
So if we were if the voter was going to vote for an either or, I mean, the probability of either one of them passing is reduced by 50%. And so I just don't see how that would benefit us if you were voting for one or the other.
And I'm going to do my best to articulate D. Weiser's words. When you present 2 questions, it's like you need to vote for this 1%. And then, and again, this is based on his experience with elections in the past, was that you need to vote for this first one. And then if you want more, vote for the second one.
Instead of an either or, it'd be a 1% question, and if the 1% question passed, then says, do you want to throw another 0.5% on top of that?
Both could get passed and we'd go with the 1.5%, but if.
Well, in 2000, what were they looking for an increase?
1%.
And did that get close?
Don't remember the actual numbers, but it was defeated, as was a similar question in '99, the year before.
I think it was 60 to 40, something like that. It was a pretty good defeat, but that's the number I remember.
One of the biggest differences we have now that we didn't have then, we have an awful lot of facts right now. Here are the facts. We got 115 miles of roads. 65% of them are unsatisfactory to at risk, and it ain't going to get any better. So, and like Dennis said, it's 15 years older now.
You know, from a pragmatic point of view, we pay for each question we put on the ballot, don't we? What do we pay to put a question on? Or each?
And you're gonna quote me. I don't know what it is this year. 'cause we
Oh,
haven't-
yeah, no, I mean, if we put 10 questions on the ballot, then it's 8,000 apiece, or do we
You'll
get the bulk rate?
You'll get some credit for having, a number of them. You know, your first one might be 8, the next one might be 7. You may get a cost break
Yeah.
of each question.
Is
but-
it not my understanding that since we're having a general election anyway, that we're kind of already throwing into that pool, and then it's like
Per,
it should,
per voter opportunity, that's
yeah,
what you
right,
get charged.
okay.
Per voter opportunity, per question.
Well, this sounds like it's kind of one question with an addendum attached to it.
Separate questions.
It's two separate questions, for sure.
If you want to go with two questions, and again, staff tried to analyze what was said in the meeting, and it seemed that one major goal was simplicity in terms of what was presented to the voters. But you could refer both 7 and 8, the 1% and the 1.5% questions, and there'd be a yes or no vote on each of them, and the prevailing, if both prevail, then the 1.5% increase would be the one that would be imposed. And that would require a little bit of amendment to some of the language in ordinance number 8. But you run some risk of creating voter confusion if you do it that way. And that's for you to decide, not for staff. But it could, the difference between 1.5% and 1% is 12.5 times what we are spending now if you vote for a 1.5% increase, 7.5 more, 7.5 times the annual budget being spent going forward if you vote for and approve a 1% sales and use tax increase, rate increase.
So
It's
we
really how you wish to present the matter to the voter and how much effort you want to make to explain why you submitted two questions instead of one.
So we just give them an either or.
You can't give them an either. You can't put vote yes or no. And actually, I double-checked with Dee Weiser. He couldn't put his fingers on copies of the Jeffco election that's several years ago that reminded him to make the remarks he did make. I did ask him whether we could, because I couldn't figure out how to do it, put alternatives in a single question, and he arrived where I had arrived and where the clerk had arrived. You need two questions if you're going to have voters choose between 1.5 and 1.
Councilwoman Frida.
Well, I think we would need to be real clear about what you get for 1% and what you get for 1.5%, so that they have something to think about. The 1% is just going to be the bare bones of the thoroughfares. The 1.5 would probably cover some secondary streets. I don't know, Doug, how much more would we get for the 1.5?
I think that what it's going to, I don't know the answer to that question right now. I think what it's going to boil down to is that going forward, we want to be specific enough to give them an indication of what it is that they're going to get for this amount. At the same time, we have to have some amount of flexibility because we're going to run into things that we don't really know today. Prices are going to change. We have certain roads that we may have to find out that in order to save a road, maybe it's not a thoroughfare, but it's one that we've put money into recently in order to keep that road in good shape. We may need to put some more money into it to keep it that way, so it doesn't continue to deteriorate. So there, I think that plan that we developed, going back a couple years ago, is going to lay out priorities, and it's going to lay out directions, and over the next year, if this were to get approved, I think then we're going to have to come up with a very specific list that the council is going to have to approve based upon the prioritization laid out in that plan. But you're going to have some amount of flexibility going forward. I don't know that we're going to be able to say, we're going to approve street A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that's what you're going to get.
That was kind of my takeaway from Adam's comments around this.
I think that the focus is probably going to end up being on the major thoroughfares. Again, but to say, well, it's going to be 5th Street, 9th Street, 15th
okay,
Street.
maybe not to that.
Not that level of detail.
Oh, sure. Just be real clear that it will just be the thoroughfares and the arterials or whatever.
And the other thing that I want to point out, that doesn't necessarily mean that if we were to get this revenue, that we're going to just forsake all the other streets in town. We know that there's still going to have to be street improvements to some of those secondary streets, and we're going to have to do our best to try to, make those streets as best as we can. But the focus in terms of the investment of the money is probably in the thoroughfares.
Well, we shouldn't stop doing what we currently are doing, which is the 400,000 that we put toward maintenance. But this, so that there would be that ongoing, but this would be in addition.
Now, there's another piece, and we'll get to that as maybe the third question, is keep in mind that the next item we're going to talk about after we get past these two is this property tax issue. And one of the things that we have talked about with the city council is offering the opportunity to the public to determine whether or not they want to waive or to defer that property tax, eliminate the property tax for the next 10 years. So it's a specific period of time. Now, again, keep in mind that's about $400,000. So if we eliminate that property tax coming in, we just eliminated $400,000. That's the same amount of money that we're putting into our streets today, right? And so to put that continue to put that $400,000 into our streets, from a budgeting perspective, just keep in mind, it's going to impact somewhere else in the budget. That means you got to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. We're going to be taking it away from parks, trails. I don't know what it's going to be, but in order to put it into streets, because we eliminated that property tax. And it may be that the voters will say, well, let's keep 1% or 1.5%, whatever they say, but let's also keep that property tax in place. So, but we don't know that answer today.
Councilman Ekstrom, did you have a comment?
I do. I just, another thought or a conversation that came up during this meeting that I wanted to make sure that the council was aware of. The 1.5 number itself was arbitrary. I think it was just kind of thrown out. 1% based on current dollars wasn't enough. But 1.5 was in excess of what was needed to get thoroughfares. So I think it was just thrown out. I concur with Councilman Weed that in voting 1.5, we're going to put ourselves in a different league as far as sales tax goes, and based on our surrounding communities and other actually major communities that people do shopping. I don't think it's wise for us to move forward with that. So I'd actually just, at this point, let's just move it to a vote. As
I'm going to call a question.
yeah, I do.
I had one other question real quick for clarification.
Sure.
And that is that currently we spend our $400,000 with our streets division, and they go out and they do improvements and they do maintenance.
Potholes.
They do what they can
Right.
with those resources. Now, if we come up with a tax issue and we have a lot more money, are we increasing the size of our streets division, or are we utilizing that money to go out and contract these jobs to outside companies?
The way I envision this is not about putting more people into the city government, if you will, making the city government bigger. This is putting money into our streets. That money would largely be contracted. Some of it might be done by the current staff that we have, but it's really going to be aimed at putting the money into our streets. And to do that level of project or projects, we can't do it. And we don't want to take on more people. So it's going to be done largely through contracts.
And I just thought it was important to put that out there so that people do understand that that's what we're looking to do.
All right, call the roll.
Councilmember Weed.
No.
Councilmember Frida.
No.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
No.
Councilmember Ketchmar.
No.
Councilmember Bates.
No.
Councilmember Sharaki. Denied by majority vote.
Always got to have one.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is ordinance number 8, series 2015, first reading. And this is an ordinance referring to the question of whether to increase sales and use tax by 1%. I need 3 to introduce. Councilman Bates, Councilman Ketchmark, Councilman Weed. Clerk, read by title, please. 8.
This is a bill for ordinance number 8, series of 2015, and ordinance referring to the eligible electors of the City of Canyon City's November 3rd, 2015 general election. The question of whether the city's sales and use tax rate should be increased by 1%, with all the revenue therefrom to be spent exclusively for the construction, reconstruction, repair, and maintenance of streets, roads, bridges within the city, fixing the ballot title and question, and setting forth other details relating thereto.
John, do you have anything to add from your previous report?
Let me just underscore that it is estimated that this sales tax rate increase would produce approximately $3.5 million per year. That amount would be 7.5 times what is currently being spent on streets, so it would be of significant help. That's 750%, I believe.
May I have a motion, please? Councilman Bates?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I make a recommendation, we approve ordinance number 8, series of 2015 on first reading.
Second.
Second from Councilman Weed. Any discussion?
True, we have estimated about $50 million worth of road work with the 115 miles.
Huh?
What's the estimated with your, how much road work do we need? How much money? We ballparking?
Councilman Ekstrom?
Thank you very much. To answer that question, this is actually a 30-year plan, and the actual monetary amount that it's going to take to improve our roads well exceeds what we're budgeting or what we're going for right now. But we run into two problems. First, and this was part of the conversation again that we had the other day, if we were to even go out and have a windfall of $30 million, there's no way that we could actually mobilize and put people to work on our roads to get that work done right away. So our town, you know, and I personally in the last week have noticed several road closures that have, you know, forced me to, you know, kind of move around town, and it's quite cumbersome. So our town can only take so much improvement at once. But then the second is that when you have that much money, you have to, you know, going back to the borrowing aspect of it, you only have so many years to actually spend it. And
I think it was 3.
It was 3 years, and city staff felt that would, and again, it was my analogy, but the Brewster's Million type of thing, that you're trying to spend it as fast as you get it. And city staff felt that at that point you actually become inefficient, because now you're going out and getting bids and spending money when you really could have planned it differently. And if you recall, our water department said that we can't keep up with improving the water infrastructure with that alternate plan.
Yeah, there's more to it than just going out and borrowing the money, as we found out the hard way, so.
Okay, any further discussion? Call the roll.
Councilmember Bates?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Frida?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharaki?
Aye.
Councilmember Ketchmar?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Next is ordinance number 9, series 2015, first reading of an ordinance referring the question of whether to defer property taxes for 10 years. I need 3 to introduce. Councilman Ekstrom, Councilwoman Frida, Councilman Weed. Clerk, read by title, please.
Be version B that you want to read.
As the mayor indicated, we'll be doing a bill for ordinance number 9. That would be version B in your packet. This is a bill for ordinance number 9, series of 2015, and ordinance referring to the eligible electors of the City of Canyon City at the city's November 3rd, 2015 general election. The question of whether the property tax mill levy rate applicable within the city should be temporarily reduced to 0 mills for a period of 10 years if, but only if, the eligible electors of the city have approved a 1% sales and use tax rate increase at the said 2015 general election, fixing the ballot title and question, and setting forth other details relating thereto.
We have a report from the attorney.
Mr. Mayor, it appeared last time a portion of council gathered to discuss ballot issues, that the property tax forgiveness was not going to be one of those items you, as a group, would refer to the voters. But not everybody was there, so we included versions A and B of Ordinance 9 in your packets, depending on whether you landed on referring a 1% or 1.5% sales and use tax rate increase. You decided on 1% earlier, so version B is the version that you may or may not wish to refer to the voters if you feel that you want to offer in exchange for affirmative votes for a sales and use tax rate increase, a forgiveness of property tax for a period of 10 years. And actually, property tax is accruing this year, and we'll certify a mill levy at the end of this year for taxes accrued in 2015. So the deferment or extinguishing of sales tax or property taxes for 10 years would carry forward with the certification, instead of being 2.9 mils, where it has traditionally been, becoming 0 for a period of 10 years, with the tax to be certified and the levy to be levied in 2016, so that would mean no property taxes would be payable in 2017 and for the 9 years which follow. And at the end of that period, the way this question is written, then the mill levy would be reinstated at the end of the 10th year of deferral, and at no greater than at the level it currently is set now, 2.9 mils. So you may want to go forward with version B, or you may not want to go forward with this at all. That, again, is your decision.
May I have a motion, please? Councilman Ketchmar?
Well, I've got one quick question. The 2.9 mils, what approximately does that represent as a percentage of an average property tax liability?
I mean, I can tell you that my city property tax payment for my house is somewhere between $30 and $40 and has been for years. The commercial property is assessed at a higher rate, and somebody else may have a good idea on commercial. But the revenue raised annually from property taxes levied by the city, and there are a lot of other entities that levy property taxes and property taxes in greater amounts than the city, but that annual revenue is roughly $400,000 annually.
So it's a relatively small portion of one's real estate taxes. I mean, we're not.
For residential property, yeah, it's a much lower tax than many of the other property taxes we all pay.
Councilwoman Frida?
However, that $400,000 that we are getting from the property tax is the money that we are currently using for our roads and streets.
So we should probably make a motion and then discuss the motion. Councilman Weed?
Good idea, Mayor. Okay. I move that we approve ordinance number 9, series of 2015 on first reading.
Second.
Second from Councilman Bates. And now we'll move to discussion. Any other comments, discussion from the council? I've just a quick comment. The whole idea of the sales tax increase coupled with a property tax deferment came about as we were reviewing last year's budget, I believe. And we looked at the not insignificant, but in the scheme of things, fairly insignificant amount of the budget. Our feeling was that sales tax increases aren't very popular, very seldom pass. We didn't know the outcome of last year's election at the time we had discussion. But we felt like increasing sales tax and deferring property tax shifts the burden of our streets to more people that use our streets. And at the time, I think that's where the 1%, 1.5% came. If we increase sales tax by 1.5%, we could give something back to the property
Yeah.
owners and say, you know, in exchange for your consideration of a sales tax increase, let's give you the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to keep property tax. So property taxes go up in one regard and down in another regard, but that burden is shifted to a larger, more diverse group. Since then, we've looked at studies, and we've obviously seen that the sales tax increase of 1.5% would put us well above
Regional
what you
averages,
might call
yeah.
our competitors, right?
Yeah.
Competing communities. And therefore, reducing that sales tax question to 1% may deem this sort of irrelevant. That's my opinion, because it's not really what the idea that we had in the beginning. Councilman Ekstrom?
Yes, and this is actually, I'm paraphrasing what another council member stated, but we need more than 1%. We're asking for 1%. And I don't believe we should make a concession for what we need. We need 1% to move forward. And hopefully sales tax revenues will increase. And over the next 5 years, we'll see an increase of sales tax revenues, which will then, in turn, allow us to spend more on roads. But for us to make a concession to and move backwards with this question would be unwise, because again, we're basing it off of current assessments. Property values are going to go up, and again, that's going to be an additional source of revenue that I believe our town sorely needs.
Well, and to look at it another way, is if the 1% did not pass and the property tax abatement did pass,
It would be
They'd be tied-
contingent
No,
upon the
uh,
1%
it'd
passing.
be okay, okay.
It's conditional.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's conditional.
I think it made sense when we were asking for 1.5%. Right. It doesn't make as much sense now, because it basically eliminates our current road budget, and we'll still increase it if the sales tax increase takes effect.
Question, yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weed.
No.
Councilmember Bates.
No.
Councilmember Frida. No. Councilmember Ekstrom.
No.
Councilmember Sharaki. No. Councilmember Ketchmar.
No.
Motion denied by unanimous vote.